So this shows you that the master doesn't give you a philosophy that all disciples believe the same, explains things in the same way, because words can never capture reality. So that's why we don't have to get so hung up on words, even in our lodges. If disciples, initiated disciples, can argue about concepts and both be initiated disciples of the same master, that shows you that they both perceive reality, but the way they explain reality is different, because it does accept different presentations. That's why the TS is based on freedom of thought. It's a recognition that words can never capture reality. Actually, that's the translation of our motto. There is no religion higher than truth. You know, Satyam Nasti Paro Dharma. You can translate it in different ways. Dharma can be truth or doctrines, teachings, spiritual teachings. So the idea is that truth will always remain beyond any teaching. Theosophical or Christian or Buddhist, truth cannot be captured by any teaching. That's what our model says. So anyway, so this is why the masters don't care what you believe, unless that belief make you unfit for the path and for service. So if your belief makes you intolerant, then your belief is a problem. If your belief makes you fall into superstitions, that's a problem. But otherwise, philosophical views, sure, they say whatever works with you is fine. Then on higher planes beyond words, you can perceive reality in a more direct way. So our masters will not ask you what you believe. That, as I have said, is your own affair. But they will ask you what good work you are doing. So that's what, more than teachers, the masters are like these trainers in a craft. You know, you go to the masters to be trained in a piece of work, not to be taught a series of concepts. You can know you have an infallible criterion if you will only be absolutely honest with yourselves. Are you living a higher, purer, nobler, and above all, more unselfish and useful life than you were before? So that's the only criterion. Am I, getting closer to this, to be less selfish, to be more compassionate, etc. Not perfect. If you were perfect in that, you would be a master. The idea is to start working to get closer and closer to that ideal. Are you thinking ever less and less of yourself and your progress, less and less of gratifying your desires and your emotions, and ever more and more serving your fellow men? Now, this is something that has to happen also as a result of maturity. You stop thinking of yourself just because your growth makes you be naturally less concerned with yourself. And as you are naturally less concerned with yourself, you are more concerned with the other, with the world. I mean, it's like a mother that has a baby. The mother, the love of the mother for the baby makes the mother do sacrifices, not because it is my duty to do this. But, of course, some mothers may feel like that, ideally, let's say. The mother does it out of the love for the baby. So that self-forgetting is not imposed. It's a natural self-forgetting because you are more interested in the welfare of the other than in your own. But paradoxically, that's where you are at your best, because all the problems in our lives are produced by our own self-centeredness. The more self-centered we are, the more we notice that things don't go our way, that people don't treat us in the way that we like, that things this is natural. We are all starting from here. But what you see is that the less you think about yourself in a mature way, not because you are avoiding it, the freer you are. If somebody or if something didn't go your way, you don't even notice it. Fine, I don't care anyway. So this self-forgetting is actually something that gives you freedom. Okay, so Leadbeater says, are you working more strenuously than ever? If so, you are passing your test, you are advancing, and our Master's blessing will rest upon you. But those who, for fancied self-realization or self-development, forsake the helping of their brethren, are moving backwards, not forwards. So this is also an important point. We are doing all this to be able to help better humanity. So when there is a conflict between duty, let's say, and again, not an imposed duty, but our work, when there is a conflict between our work and our inner life or our development, we choose the work that has to be done. Again, in an intelligent way. If you never develop yourself, then the job that you can offer will be of a certain level. The more you develop yourself, the work that you can offer can be of a higher level. So you want to develop yourself because then you can serve better. But in particular circumstances, when duty calls, that is what is important. Not that, oh no, today I have to meditate, so sorry, I can't do that, I need to meditate because I have to follow my discipline. You know, that's the idea. That's why those who fancy self-realization or self-development for themselves and forsake helping are actually not growing spiritually, but moving backwards. Deeds, not words alone, are the sign of real progress. All right, any thoughts or comments about this?
What does it mean by fancy self-realization?
That's older English, those who desire self-realization and self-development, right? When they say, do you fancy doing this? Do you want? Do you desire? Is that correct, all your
Yes.
English?
Yeah, but in Buddhist teachings, there's some monks who go to the mountain to actually practice so they can attain enlightenment, so they can help other people. Is that called fancy self-realization as well?
No, if your motivation is really to help others, there may be an incarnation in which you have an incarnation away from the world so that you can develop. Now, if you do that because you are seeking for your own realization, then yes, then that would be a problem from the point of view of the occult path. So this is from the point of view of the occult path. People who work for their own realization, they can attain nirvana, and they are part of nature. And sometimes in theosophical literature you see that path is criticized, but that criticism is because the TS was created to promote this path, to promote the path of the Bodhisattva, let's say, to promote what the TS wants to do is to attract people who can join the masters whose role is to help human evolution. So in theosophical literature, you will see many times criticism to those who leave humanity and work for their own progress, because the purpose of the TS is to promote the other path. But from a broader point of view, that is also allowed, and they have their own role in nature. It's not that this is, a demonic path, but what the TS proposes is this path of trying to get more and more human beings committed to helping human evolution. And not only human, animal, and all evolution, but if we were to leave nature alone, nature can't do everything perfectly, so if we stop interfering in animal evolution, then animal evolution will be fine. So there is a focus on human evolution because we are the troublemakers. But the concern is always also with all the kingdoms of nature.
I understand it doesn't matter what you believe, but does it mean religiously that it's better to believe something than be an atheist in the philosophical sense?
No, what matters is your life. If you are an atheist and you work for humanity, you have humanity at heart, and Annie Besant, before joining the TS, she was an atheist, and you see that the Master KH tells Sinet in one of the Mahatma letters, get in touch with Annie Besant and try to, draw her attention to the TS, not because the masters wanted Annie Besant to believe in theosophy, but because of the possibility of working in this way. And then there is a letter from Blavatsky before Annie Besant joined the TS, where Blavatsky says, even though she doesn't believe in her own soul, one lecture of Annie Besant does far more good than 1,000 lectures of these mediums inspired by spirit guides. So again, what matters is your sincerity in helping humanity, and of course your qualifications. Now, there is certain knowledge that helps you do the work more effectively. Knowing about karma, that there is an order behind things, can allow you to deal with the problems of the world in a calmer way, for example. So, of course, the teachings are helpful. But if for whatever reason you have the right attitude, even believing in nothing, the masters could use you to do the work. And eventually you will come to start perceiving reality, and you will perceive that, yes, there is more than the physical, yes. But as Lebeter says here, the essential point is, for this path, do you have at heart the welfare of humanity? So same in the TS, our focus, we may know all of theosophy, we may, be able to write or speak, but if we are self-centered, that doesn't help the masters in that way. I mean, you are doing the work of spreading theosophy, but that's not their main interest, right? Their main interest is people who are gradually qualifying themselves to help them in the work of helping humanity. A person may be the best lecturer in the world, but if he or she is doing it out of, like Hume, arrogance or mere intellectuality, it's great that this person is spreading the teachings, in an effective way, but that person is not really advancing in this particular path.
Can you explain? I feel like this is very important, that the main point of TS is not about spreading it in horizontally, but like giving it more deep, like spreading it in a deeper way.
Yeah. Yes, and essentially it's that. Now, many times you need to spread it horizontally to reach people, but if we stay only at that level, then we are not doing the full work that we need to do. So there is a certain need to spread the teachings horizontally, as you say, but we want to do more than that. We want to do that so that more people can go deep.
Pablo?
Yes.
I think that was something I found very interesting, because even when Tim was here in the last gathering, there was a dialogue which we were having, and one of us asked him, what for you is the mission or the future of TS? I think he also brought up something really profound that you just said. Yes, spreading the TS teachings in itself is a thing, you have to do it. But he gave the example of the little experiments and projects that are happening in India. He said the things which we do with schools, or the Besant Animal Hospital and the Eco Project, those might not directly be about the membership or TS lectures or something, but he said these involve what the ultimate goal of the society was.
Yeah, certainly.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we need to use our discernment. So all work to help humanity is good and necessary, and the TS was not founded to be a religion where all we do is to pass on the teachings of our master, like all religions. And there are different ways of helping humanity and attracting people. I think, in a certain sense, more is better, in the sense that different approaches, the TS encompasses different approaches. What I feel we need to be careful is that in doing several things, Theosophy still has its place, because what happens in some lodges or some places is that in bringing up all these different traditions and all that, then there are no lectures on Theosophy. So if we don't teach Theosophy, who will do it? I mean, if we don't teach Buddhism, for example, the Buddhists will keep teaching Buddhism. We don't teach Hinduism, the Hindus. If we don't teach Theosophy, will the Buddhists teach Theosophy, or the Hindu, or the Christian? So we are more than just spreading Theosophy, but spreading Theosophy is an essential part of the TS. So yes, I agree, all these things are part of the TS work. We just have to be careful and see that they don't take all the oxygen and then there is nothing Theosophical.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, but this is something very practical and applies directly to the TS work that we are doing in Australia. So we all know that Theosophy is not a religion. So do you have any suggestion that why us like young people, when we do TS work, we want to spread Theosophy? Is there any suggestion that we can spread Theosophy rather than preach Theosophy?
Yes, there is a lot of that, a lot of quotes about that. I don't think we can go in that direction because it's a whole subject in itself. But Blavatsky basically said, the best way to preach Theosophy is to do Theosophy, And again, the TS is different from all organizations. Like the Krishnamurti Foundation was formed to spread Krishnamurti teachings, perfectly clear. The Steiner anthropology, Steiner's, Buddhism for the Buddha, etc. The TS is not formed with that model in mind, although spreading the teachings is part of its work, but it's not the only work. So we need to find a balance. There has to be a healthy activity of spreading the teachings, but not exclusively, because then we will become another sect, which the masters didn't want. So we need to do this, and in addition to have other things to be open, to integrate, to compare. So that's something that we don't see in the world. There are other organizations that are just umbrellas for the teachings for all different teachings, and they don't have anything of their own. Well, the TS is not that either. The TS is not just an umbrella organization where we invite a shaman, a Buddhist, a Hindu, and that's all we do. No, we have our own teachings also. So the TS is neither a sect that only spreads its own teachings, nor these empty organizations that are just a platform for everybody else. And it forces us to use our discernment. What's the right, balance? All right. And then the other thing that is important is to understand that this is one of the reasons during breakfast we were talking with a group of you that the Mahatma letters, that the masters never wanted the Mahatma letters to become public. These were private letters to Sinnett and Hume. Somebody decided to publish them anyway. And as wonderful as they are, and I have studied and given many talks on the Mahatma letters, they do give some wrong impressions of what the masters are, what they do. And one of them, it gives the impression that the masters are interested, their interest is on what happens on the physical plane, on communicating with people, on telling the TS leaders what to do, on sending money to build the little Buddhist stupa in Adyar. They did even that. 180 rupees, I think it was something like that at the time. And but that was something very unique and extraordinary. It was not the norm that the masters got involved so much with the physical, because they were launching a new organization and they wanted the idea of the masters to be known by the world, the masters and the path. But the masters, their normal activity is always on the higher planes, not with the personalities. So Hodgson says here, the interests of the adept are wholly spiritual. His only concern, or at least very largely, with the spiritual evolution taking place on the planet. The material evolution is left to nature, whose special work it is. The adept is a quickener of spiritual unfoldment. So your relationship with the master is and will be mostly on the inner planes, and your physical consciousness may know nothing about it. This is why it's even silly to ask somebody, are you in touch with the master, or are you a disciple? Most people wouldn't know it. And even if a person knows it in the TS, we should never, because of what we talked about, we should never be open to those kind of questions. Because that generates, opens a whole, can of worms. So we shouldn't ask those questions, I think, this is my feeling, right? We shouldn't ask those questions, put the person in the position to having to say something, because even if the person says no, even answering that normalizes that people ask those questions. And many times the one that will say yes are exactly the ones that are not in touch with the masters, and the one that would like to use that to manipulate. So it doesn't matter, as Krishnamurti would always be asked, are you the world teacher? And Krishnamurti would say, well, it doesn't matter. Let us, stop that, because that, as we said, there was a change in policy. Later in his life, people from the Krishnamurti circle, they were criticizing Besa and Lebeter with all this publicity about the world teacher. And Krishnamurti said, don't criticize what they did, because a person like Ramana Maharshi had 10, 12 people listening to him during his life, but I began to speak for thousands of people because of that publicity. So if Krishnamurti had to do a job, all that publicity was necessary. And actually, Besa and Lebeter said, we didn't want to expose a child, with when Krishnamurti wrote at the feet of the master, they put a pseudonym because they wanted to protect Krishnamurti. And they said, the master told us, you have to state publicly all this. And Besa and Lebeter said, we didn't want to do it, but of course the master knows better, and then we did it because the master wanted to do it. And it did work. Krishnamurti had very soon a huge audience so that he could start his role. But on besides those extraordinary circumstances, the healthiest thing is not to fall into questions of authority. Somebody says something, use your discernment to see if what that person says resonates with you. It doesn't matter if that person is a disciple or not. Disciples can be wrong, so it doesn't matter really. Okay, so the point here is the idea of that the masters are interested, and most of their work is on the inner planes, and you as a personality would know nothing about it, perhaps for the whole of your life. And there are many stories, I think it is in the Mahatma letters or in one of the Masters of the Wisdom, the ones by Jinarajadasa that he compiled. The master says there was this very earnest member. He had been a disciple and working for us during his whole life, but naturally he didn't know it. So at the end of his life, the master appeared there when he was about to die and say, thank you for all your service. And that's when his physical consciousness got to know that he had been working with the master. And that's the norm. The norm is that this is not something that concerns the personality. And why? Because the real work is on the inner planes, and the real masters and the real in us is not the body. So Blavatsky says, the real Mahatma is then not his physical body, but the higher manas, which is inseparably linked to Atma and Buddhi, so the higher nature, let's say. A union effected by the Mahatma in a comparatively very short period by passing through the process of self-evolution laid down by the occult philosophy. When, therefore, people express a desire to see a Mahatma, they really do not seem to understand what it is they ask for. How can they, by their physical eyes, hope to see that which transcends that sight? Is it the body, a mere shell or mask, that they crave or hunt after? And supposing they see the body of a Mahatma, how can they know that behind that mask is concealed an exalted entity? So HPV was saying, even if you see the body of a Mahatma, you are seeing just the body. The Mahatma is not the body. The extraordinary nature of the master is on the inner planes. The physical plane is just the body. So if you say, oh, I would like to see a Mahatma, well, what do you mean? To see a body? That's not a Mahatma. And then Blavatsky says, this quote goes on, but she says, because the Mahatma is those higher principles, their consciousness is omnipresent. So the master is right here, right now, or everywhere. The master is not in Tibet or in Egypt or whatever. That's the physical body. They even leave the physical body most of the day in meditation because they are working on the inner planes. So the Mahatma is right here. You just have to tune in to the frequency of the Mahatma. The Mahatma is in your life when you go out in the world, and you have to tune in with the Mahatma, with the master, and the master can be with you in everything that you do. That's what we are going to see. And this is what Krishnamurti said. This is a quote from Krishnamurti. The master to me is not a separate individual, far away in the mountains. And when I think about him, I see him everywhere, in every stone, under every dead leaf, and there will be some to whom that vagueness might not be sufficient. You have all these things around you, the mountains, trees, great immense peace. And those of you who are searching for the master, trying to find him somewhere far away, will lose him. If you can't find him everywhere, if you can't find him in every tree, every mountain, every human being, then the master becomes much more real and not the master of somebody else. He becomes part of you, your very inmost being, and you yourself become transformed. After all, the master is perfection of human beings, but so far ahead of every one of us. But he has gone through the mental and emotional attitude that each one of us is going through. And the moment you look at the master from the point of view that he is yourself, that he is a part of you, that he is your friend in a bigger sense, the master can see you, and you can then never be lonely. So this is a tuning in with the consciousness of the master. Whenever you reflect in your life what a master is, you are tuning in with the consciousness of the master. The masters, as we said, are working for humanity. Whenever you are doing something out of altruism, even if it is something very little, again, service has no measure. Every little action that is moved by altruism puts you in rapport, in tune with the master, which is part of you, because it interpenetrates. We are one with the master in our higher consciousness. Whenever you work in something that the master is trying to promote, you are reproducing down here what the master does on higher planes. You are part of the consciousness of the master. And the consciousness of the master begins to shape your own personality into a likeness of the master. And you begin to be an expression in your own reduced way of the likeness of the master. Any comments or questions? All right, we'll see more about this.
So it means
Yes.
one of the best way to become like master is think about them.
Mm-hmm. We'll
Think
see
about,
all that. Yeah.
Like Krishnamurti said, think what the masters would do, even if you haven't met in like consciously, just try to think how would they act in this situation.
Yeah. And make their presence, their existence, a dominant factor in your life. Isn't there a Christian saying, or maybe Hindu, that Jesus or the divine is closer to you than your own breath, or maybe it's Muslim? But that's the idea. The master is closer to you than your own breath, let's say.
But I think it should develop, this should be something natural, not I want to be like a master. I mean, it should be something that comes naturally, not thinking about, oh, I want to be close to the master, or I want to, I don't know.
Well, it depends on your nature. I mean, there is an element of devotion that is perfectly fine, in the sense that give room to the devotion. I love the master. I want to be near the master, not because I'm thinking of myself or anything. You know, I understand what you are saying. If you say, I want to be near the master, so because, you know, I want to be special. Yeah, that is the ego. But there is this other longing for the master that has to do with the devotion, with love. When you love somebody, you want to be near that somebody. So if you, I see you. Let me finish this. If you love the master, if you love what they represent, if you love truth, you want to be near that. So if you have a devotional nature, that's perfectly fine. Long to be with the master, but not physically, as Blavatsky says. You know, with the physical body, I mean, we are so dominated by physical consciousness that naturally we would say, oh, it would be awesome to have the master here. But you wouldn't be with the master, you would be with a physical body that can express so little of what the master is. So your longing to be with the master, in the presence of the master, is an inner longing. It's to share in their consciousness, in their presence. So don't be afraid of nourish that devotion if that's part of you, you know. If you are second ray, sixth ray, fourth ray also has a devotional elements, or any ray. I'm not any of those, but I have a devotion for the master because we have all the rays. You know, my devotion may be more intellectual than the devotion of other people, of other rays, let's say. But don't be afraid to nourish the devotion. You know, nourish the love part, not the ego part of feeling special and all that. Yes, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to share. This is something that I'm opening up to the group to like my like is bhakti yoga, so it's devotion. But we always say don't ever just have one extreme devotion, because you see that with someone called Mirabai, who's a princess. She became so devoted to Krishna Bhagavan that she literally just became one with him. But we always say don't have just bhakti, you must have gyan yoga as well, discernment. If you do not have actual discernment, you'll be completely in awe with it, but you completely lose yourself. That's why a lot of people that read mysticism, they don't actually understand it because we can't penetrate it, because it's so personal that it's, if you listen to a mystic, sometimes it don't make sense. But then when you start to understand and put that into practice, then you start to say, are they drunk with the divine love? And this is why you see Rumi talking about, am I with my loved, my beloved? And you're like, what is he on about? Is he actually in a relationship? And then in Bhakti Yoga, you actually see Mirabai is actually saying, I'm an Atma, which is trying to get in touch with Paramatma. So they're actually saying, I'm still one, but I'm looking to be in touch with the other again. Because you remember, like as you say, we were one, the dualities happened. So these people go beyond the veil. So it becomes quite mystical, it's sensual, it's quite, so it's like the lower planes trying to sensually go back to its source. And we see that with Shiv Shakti as well.
Yes,
It's united.
Yeah,
So,
I think, I mean, the Theosophical tradition always proposes an integral development where you may have an accent of something, of bhakti, of jnana, of karma. You may have something that is more, so for those who don't know the Sanskrit word, bhakti, devotion, jnana is understanding, wisdom, karma is action. So you may have something that is dominant in you, but the recommendation is to develop the other aspects. We want to grow in an organic and integrated and holistic way. However, I personally don't feel I have the right or even the understanding to judge other paths, because I think even a person that can be fully devoted, only devotion, I think that can be also a valid path. And sure, a fully devoted person that dismisses the mind, dismisses the action, will not be fit for this world. But after all, so what? I mean, yes, if you want to help the world, which is the occult path, you need to be in the world and know how. But that path is different. Their path is about union with the divine. And I personally don't feel, I feel a little, that I would be too arrogant to say, oh, that is not the path, you should do this. You know, there have been great mystics and they were quite useless on the physical plane, but they did attain a union with the divine that I don't have. But yes, I mean, the Theosophical path recommends that more integral development for us. Yes, Harry first.
Pablo, do you mind going back to the previous quote? Because I truly found this very profound, because I think it's the first time I'm seeing JK actually refer to masters. So yes, in Hinduism, we were talking about Adi Shankaracharya and his quotes yesterday. He talks about Brahman or the Atman, which is everywhere and all of that. So from what I see in this quote, he says if you can't find him everywhere, if you're trying to find him somewhere, you'll lose him. So I think, again, like Elena was saying, I don't think this could be intentional in the sense that, oh, I should think like master, or I should see a master, or like. So I think what he's trying to say is more like what Adi Shankaracharya, or in Hinduism we talk about the Atman. It's everywhere. Like if you can't feel it here in a tree or a leaf or a stone, you won't find it. So I think I found it somewhere more analogous to.
Yeah. So the masters do have the two aspects. What makes the difference between a master of wisdom and what Blavatsky would call Nirmanakayas, for example. The Nirmanakayas are enlightened beings, not in Buddhism, but in the esoteric philosophy, Nirmanakayas are different. In Buddhism, it's the physical body of the Buddha. In the esoteric philosophy, the word Nirmanakaya is used for enlightened beings who have left the lower principles behind. So they are basically on those planes of unity, let's say. But Blavatsky always said the master of wisdom has both natures, the spiritual nature and an individual, even physical nature. All masters of wisdom have to be incarnated because they are like a bridge on all the planes. So the masters need to bring all the planes together. So they do have this spiritual, omnipresent aspect, but they also have the individual aspect. So you can be called on the astral plane by a master acting on an individual astral body, coming and telling you, we think that you could do this job well, would you like to do this job that we would need? So both things are true. Now, I think what these quotes help us is not to be limited by the individual aspect of the master. So whatever your way is, again, if it inspires you more to think of the master as the unity, then place the emphasis there. But remember that the master also manifests individually. And if it inspires you more, like many devotional paths, they need the object of devotion to be separate from them so that you can adore and love the object of devotion. So some people may inspire them to think of the separate part, even though they need to know that they are one. So see, you have to find a way, how can the master become real in your life? From this point of view, think of the masters as a state of consciousness. The state of consciousness in which there is altruism and peace and balance and love. And every time you go within and you can sense some of that, you are in the presence of the master. Or even if it is not one of those feelings, every time you have within yourself the aspiration to serve, you are in the presence of the master. the master as a state of consciousness. But at the same time, if it inspires you, you can think of the master as an individual manifestation doing this and that.
So am I right to say from your explanation that the term master is very open to many different interpretations, almost to the point where it's interchangeable with other divine concepts like God or the divine, as long as it evokes a symbol of some kind of unity, oneness, or some kind of divine consciousness. It can be interpreted in many different ways by different people depending on their personality or what they feel gravitational resonance towards, rather than something more concrete like what we read in the books about the master being a certain individual who has ascended and transcended the lower planes. Because I mean that's what I'm just getting from your explanation here.
Yeah, because the masters are enlightened beings that have realized the unity with all. So they have a presence as part of the unity, but instead of just being blended in the whole, in the totality, those who are masters of wisdom, as I was saying, retain the individuality so that they can also express on the lower planes as individuals. So the master is all of that. Like sometimes when we think of God, we may think of, a more theosophical idea of God as being the unity everywhere, and the masters share in that, but also the masters have an individuality, and I think that's what the early Christians were seeking with God and Jesus. So you have God that is unknown, transcendental, and all that, and they have the figure of Jesus that is the visible face of God, the individual face of God. So the masters of wisdom are both. They represent the totality, and they are also an individual face. The first portraits of the masters that were painted. This was a request from the masters themselves, and they actually helped. If you see, there are some articles where Blavatsky was involved, and they got this painter, and Blavatsky was there, and several theosophists, and Blavatsky said, paint whatever image comes to your mind. And Blavatsky says the master was there, projecting that image in the mind of the painter, and even guiding the hand of the painter in some places. And then the masters themselves say that in the Mahatma letters. So you would think, why were they concerned about an image of their bodies if they are far more transcendental than the bodies? But having for us is a limitation. They are answering to our own limitation. If in meditation you want to meditate on the master, many times it's far easier to picture a person, and then you try to go deeper. But they are okay also with the personal expression, as long as you know that they are far more than that. Normally, Krishnamurti tended to dismiss the personal because of his approach and to emphasize the impersonal. And you will see that a lot. Somebody else? Yes?
Before going to my question, I would like to know what is the definition of master according to you, Mr. Pablo?
So in the Theosophical tradition, a master of wisdom is, let's say, an enlightened being who retains a body, male or female. There are female masters of wisdom. So these are people who realize their nature, the highest nature, Atman, Nirvana, and they have also developed all the powers that exist at this point in evolution on each plane. So they can manipulate physical reality, the astral reality, etc. And they have developed their organism to the highest degree that is possible at this point in evolution, which many mystics don't do. Mystics, a typical mystic or non-dual teacher goes on a path of dismissing the manifestation and trying to go to the source. So they don't spend time in developing the powers that are in manifestation, because it's not needed for them. But because the masters become co-workers of nature, helping the forces of evolution, they need to have all the powers that are available there, because they use those powers to stimulate the growth of the soul and to do many other things. So a Master of Wisdom is both a mystic and a magician, let's say.
So can we become one among them?
That's the idea, that we become one of them to help humanity. Not for any personal ambition, but the path that we are talking about is the one that will lead you to become one of them. As you go through all the initiations, in the 5th initiation is when you become a Master of Wisdom. So what we were talking about yesterday is the path to that. And we are going to look at the preparation to enter that path, because it's a hard path. This is the hero's journey. And if you want to accomplish this in a short time, say 7 incarnations, 10 incarnations, that is a very short time compared to the couple of billion of years that is left of evolution in the future. If you want to do that, you have to work really hard. But in order to do that, first you have to be made ready to prepare yourself, and that's what we are going to see.
So 2 things. One, when we say Master of Wisdom, we mean teacher of wisdom, not like the end of all be all, because the masters also continue their
They keep evolving.
education
Yeah.
past that. And then, what was the last thing you said?
They develop. Oh no, that we can enter that path.
So, and then can you, like, it's not likely that we will become a Master of Wisdom in this lifetime, but it is possible in this.
Yeah, let's say the fact that we are interested on this means that in a limited number of life we can become that. 10, 15, that may be a lot for our minds, but this is why it's important to know about the evolutionary cycles. The regular path will take a few more thousands of incarnations for humanity to get to the point. And you, instead of doing that in a few thousand incarnations, you can do it in 10 or 15, let's say, or whatever. So there is a very accelerated path that you can take, but that implies a lot of inner work.
And the analogy to that is that the majority of humanity is taking a path around the mountain up to the top. If the top is the evolutionary goal, and say an aspirant is going up the side of the mountain without a path.
Yeah, yeah. So for those who may not be familiar with the idea of the master, the idea is that the Buddha is part of that hierarchy of masters of wisdom, and Jesus, all the great teachers in the world come from the masters of wisdom. It's one master of wisdom deciding to incarnate and give some teachings to the world. So they are all part of a brotherhood that work together, and part of their function is to provide the world with spiritual teachers when needed. The great spiritual teachers, not just every guru or teacher, Then another part of their job is the main job is to direct the evolutionary forces at the level of the souls. So they are like nurses of the souls. They are helping the souls evolve as fast as possible. They are nourishing the souls. And well, they are doing many things, but I would say, those are 2 visible or known jobs. Yes.
So when we tell Buddha and many people as masters, so how will they get, when are they designated as masters? Because when, according to them, they are doing good for the society and human brotherhood. So how, what is the standards, how they get designated as master, and how world recognize them as masters?
Yeah, so it's just going through this path of discipleship and initiation. So any of us, let's say we qualify ourselves, we become a disciple of one of these masters, we start working on ourselves and purifying ourselves and developing skills and transcending the ego, and then we come to a place where we can be initiated by the masters on the inner planes. This is not physical initiation. And then we continue with our spiritual development, helped by the master, really hard, spiritual development, but we have the strength and the inspiration to do that. This is not, if it feels heavy, that can only happen at the beginning of the path. Then this is what you want to do. This is like the warrior that is happy to be trained. You see in the movies, the karate guy that is being trained really hard, or Rocky, or whoever. But they do that, it's really hard, but that is their life, that's what they want. So if you have the right maturity, that's what happens. There is a very hard training dealing with your own demons and with development and with giving up the self and all that. But then gradually, you pass through different initiations that help you realize more and more the reality of the inner place. And when you get the 5th initiation, you become a master of wisdom.
Is it possible we start this process in one life, but the life after we fail?
Yes,
And
yes.
we have to start back again, or what?
Not back, but there can be back and forth, especially in the early initiations, because they are so challenging. It may happen that a personality gets derailed, and that doesn't mean much except a delay in the process. So depending on what that derail, how that was, if the personality engaged in wrong things, well, there may be one incarnation or two that the personality has to deal with the karma and then comes back to the path and continues. You never lose, once you get the first initiation, you never lose that as a soul. But the soul can get derailed. It is said that even up to the 4th initiation, the soul can get derailed for a few incarnations and then come back to the path. Once you get the 5th initiation and you are a master of wisdom, there is no possibility of any error or anything. So yes, that is possible, and it is a risk because this path is more difficult, as we saw in one of the quotes, than the regular path. So remember, Subarao says, a soul may lose its equilibrium, and those things have happened many times and will happen in the future, and they are not so dramatic as we may think they are. It's just, the risk and the sacrifice in embracing this accelerated evolution so that we can help humanity as best as possible. If it happens,
it becomes an attitude that you can't avoid. It becomes an attitude that this path
being on the path.
Yeah, it becomes an attitude that you just can't avoid.
Yeah, that when you are ready for this is a compulsion that comes from your true self, and this is not a choice of the personality. So that's why don't worry about any of that. What I think we need to work on is the preparation, and then the better the preparation, the safer will be that journey. Now, sometimes some souls sacrifice themselves in the sense of they are not really ready, but the master really needs them, and the master always offers and say, hey, there are 50% chances that you won't be able to handle this, but there are 50% chances that you will, and we really need some help here. Do you want to try? And a soul may say, I don't know, I don't feel ready, fine. If the soul says, you as a soul, the soul is not separate from you. Right now, you are the soul, but listening through the senses of the body and aware of your true nature. So when we say the soul, it is you when you are out of the body and know better. So the soul may say, sure, let us try. And if the soul fails to do that, well, it was a sacrifice for humanity, and the soul will be delayed for a little bit and then come back to the path and continue. So that's possible, always possible. And the masters are always there, watching over the souls, helping all they can. But they can. It's like they are not helicopter parents. You know that phrase, like the parents that are micromanaging everything that their children do, because then the children cannot grow. So the same with disciples. Disciples have to be left to deal with things on their own, although they are always from behind stimulating the best in us.
And they're sending signals, maybe.
Yeah, many times there are signals and little encouragements and but for the most part, this is a path that we have to tread on our own, although the masters are always helping and seeing, but they help not by doing the things for us. They help by stimulating the best in us so that we can face things with the best of our abilities.
Yeah, it's related to Russian question about who are the masters. And I think that the explanation that we've got from our national educator in Australia is really helpful to some extent. That the master are not our masters, but rather than they are the master themselves. So they have self-mastery, they can control the lower self. And it's related to Elena's question previously. I think it's really important what she said, that if we want to be in connection with the masters, is it true that the intention is important here? Because if we just want to be in connection with the master because we feel like we want a position, like I want to be validated or a disciple, and should I be resonating with the masters or should I be resonating with their word?
Yes. So we will see some of that, the intention, and the intention is the most important thing. And again, the reason why we want we want to prepare ourselves for this path is because remember the first talk that we had, the first meeting. The world is a mess. People are trying to solve the problem of the world through very poor means. Politics, social work, and all that works only on the surface. And the evolution of humanity can really be furthered and helped and improved from the inner planes. And for that, you need to become an initiate yourself, because the initiations give you the power to help humanity in a far more effective way than any politician, any physical organization, because down here is very little what we can do. Still, since this is the plane that we are aware of, we start our service down here, but aware of the limitation of the physical plane, you want to develop the power to help, and this is what the occult path is. That's why we studied from that point of view. That's why we saw that the Peter says, the master is not going to ask you what you believe, but what work you are doing, how you are living in this spirit of altruism. So it is all about the work. And if there is an aspiration to become a disciple, it is not because of the ego, it's because you want to do the work. Because when you become a disciple, your life becomes far more difficult than it was before. So if you go to discipleship thinking on your personal benefit, you are going to drop, because you say, okay, I was aspiring to this so that I get something out of it, and when I get it, what I see is that everything is being taken away from me. So no, this is not what I want. And then those are the people that drop. But if you go to discipleship, knowing that you have to be he who like Jesus said, he who clings to his life will lose it. He who loses his life will gain it in heaven. So as you understand that part of the training is to let go of the ego, and you see that the path of discipleship seems to be diminishing you instead of exalting you. But if you are doing it for humanity and you have understanding, you will go through that, and once the process is over, you have all the power and all that to help humanity, and you have lost yourself in the process. So yes, that's the idea.
Pablo, very quick trivia. So since you have been using the word hero's journey, so the great mythologist Joseph Campbell, who coined the term and who wrote a book which is I think foundational at least to cinema. You know, in every
Mhm.
story, the hero's journey.
Yeah.
So he was a Theosophist for a while. He met Jiddu Krishnamurti on a boat ride, and so you know, I found his analogy always interesting because in his steps of a hero's journey, he actually refers to a master, the helper, who comes and helps the protagonist. You know, after. So I mean, just like an analogy. For example, he talks about somebody analyzed his thing with Lord of the Rings or something like that. So you have somebody like Frodo, who has the first stage, which is the call of the adventure, and then you know he's just picked out of nowhere. He has no idea what lies ahead of him. And then you have somebody like Gandalf, who in every hero's journey, Joseph Campbell talks about the need of that one person who comes and accelerates or you know helps in some form or shape, and of course, and then Frodo has to carry the ring and go to the whole Mordor.
And at the end, the hero is always alone.
Yeah. On that mountain of Mordor, he's the last one doing
Yeah.
it. So
Same in Harry Potter in the first movie, you know, he's with all his friends, and one by one are taken away, and at the end, he's alone. All this hero journey that you find in all mythologies is explaining the occult path.
But is it the first ray? Because last night somebody says that the first ray is about being alone.
Yeah, the first ray is the one that is left most alone, but in all journey, eventually, because if you are going to be a master of wisdom, you need to be absolutely self-sufficient, but that self-sufficiency is not in the individuality, it's the self-sufficiency of not depending on external means because you are the totality. If you depend on external means, that means that you are identifying yourself with this fragment and you need external help that is separate from you. So what the adept gains is the ability to be a representation of the divine that is sufficient in itself. So all this path is toward the ultimate experience because before becoming, you know that in Christianity there is the idea Jesus was crucified and he spent 3 days in hell. Nobody says why did he go to hell. You know, there are some ideas, and then he resurrected. And this is also an expression of the occult path. In the fourth initiation, the one before becoming a master, the adept has to experience hell, that is called in Theosophy-WFYT, which is a state in which the person is cut off even from everything and even from the life of the Logos. And the experience is so awful and awesome in the sense that it's overwhelming, this overwhelming sense of isolation from life itself, that many of the initiates that are quite high initiates, they cannot bear it. So they need to continue their development and then they try again. And after the soul experiences what seems to the soul that absolute isolation, it comes out of that with absolute strength because it has found that in its own divinity is eternity. So before that transcendental experience of isolation, there is a gradual path in which we need to start learning to stand on our own feet. And sometimes when you are on the path, life will leave you alone, will start taking away things from you that you cling to. Krishnamurti, in his mission, he was so dependent of Nitya, his brother, that the beginning of his mission was after Nitya was taken away from him. And when Nitya died and he had this crisis on a ship, and he says, I stayed with all these feelings and loneliness for, I think, 3 days. And he said, when I came out of that, I was a different person. And he came out of the ship and he said, an old dream is dead. A new dream has come into being. And after that is when he started saying, the Lord is here, when he blended his consciousness with Maitreya, the world teacher. So these are parts of the path. Now again, we are talking about advanced stages of the path. I don't want to scare you and say all of a sudden, you know, I'm going to be taken away. But if you do the preparation, then when the time comes, you not only you can face it, but also you come out of the experience transformed. Michelle.
We can, although that's like a macro experience, we can find, if we look back in our lives, we can find micro experiences that reflect that death and resurrection.
Exactly. Yes. And that always happens. The overall path of initiation and the stages and the experiences, you will start experiencing that in a reduced way, because that's what begins to train you, so that when you have to face the full hero's journey. You know, this is the previous training, let's say.
Pablo, is the average here you talked about the same as the dark night of the soul that Annie Besant's mentioned?
The what of the soul?
Dark night of the soul?
Yes, she uses the dark night for that stage. Most people use the dark night in a far lower way, in a far lower sense. Saint John of the Cross, who is the one that devised that phrase, he talks about a night of the senses first and a night of the soul, but I think he also was taking it in a lower sense. But as Michelle was saying, the ultimate dark night of the soul is the experience of Avicii. But there are reflections on lower levels all the way through to the state in which we are right now. You know, we do experience mini dark nights of the soul, let's say, in life. All right, so...
But sorry,
Yes.
sometimes the dark night of the soul, also in Vivekananda experience, also in Saint John of Cross, is like when the individual experiments a higher level, like ecstasy, and after come back in the material and don't want more, come back in the
Yes, so people who are on, you know, all paths have their own strengths and weaknesses. So people who are on more devotional paths, and many of these mystics are on devotional paths, because their path is supported by the emotions, you know, the emotions of exaltation, devotion, love, and all that. And because emotions are so changing, they experience far more the extremes of emotion. So they experience the extreme of exaltation, and then the feeling of being out of that, which is very difficult to bear. So devotional mystics experience a deeper night of the soul in that way. Paths that are more on the jnana yoga, because intellectual understanding is more stable, they tend to experience less of these swings, but that means also that they tend not to get so high also, right? So not everybody experiences the night of the soul in the same way. The more devotional characters can experience as really recognizable, and the more intellectual characters, the dark night of the soul is quite different. It's not experienced emotionally.
Can I?
Yes.
If we see a Buddha's story, we know that Gautama he was a rich prince, and then he was in touch with suffering, death, and so he started his process to he entered in the path, and so he reached enlightenment. But how can we see as the master of wisdom in theosophy in this sense? I mean, we don't know anything about their childhood or their life or their process to evolution. So I'm asking if their energy is so high, and so their state of consciousness is so high that when they arrive are already in an adult body, or there is something process for them.
Well, from the Theosophical point of view, Prince Siddhartha was already a master of wisdom. When he attained Buddhahood, this was his last initiation. He actually, a typical master of wisdom has a fifth initiation, Then there is a higher initiation, the sixth initiation, that is where Maitreya, the next Buddha, is, for example. And the Buddha is the seventh initiation. So Prince Siddhartha, when he was incarnated, he had already the seventh initiation. So he was even, had a higher initiation than Master Moyan Kutumi. And that was his last life, where he attained Buddhahood. That was when he attained the seventh initiation. Now, those higher initiations are self-initiated. They don't need any more external help. And the way that we take the story from Buddhism is quite superficial. You know, he already knew the cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is known just in the very first initiation. The realization of the Buddha that made him a Buddha was something far deeper than that. Now, suffering may have been what started his journey, but the realization of the causes of suffering is a rather low realization. Actually, after he came out of his realization of Buddhahood, he didn't want to teach people. And you know, in the story, the Devas came and said, please teach us. And he said, there is no way I can teach you what I realized. Well, but you have to teach us. And then he gave the Four Noble Truths, that from the place of what he realized, the Four Noble Truths is like a teacher talking to kindergarten children. That is what we are spiritually. So his higher realization was not that. What it was, we cannot even fathom. We cannot even understand. So the life that we know of the Buddha is the last life. So the adepts, they all have their own life in which they attain a certain level of initiation, but as you say, we don't know the story because these adepts, they don't have that function of becoming this kind of world teacher, right?
But like Buddha had a childhood where he had to learn some things and some part of the personal life and so on. So the masters might also have this.
Yes,
part of,
they do.
Like Dalai Lama is born and he have to learn everything, but he's doing it much faster than a regular monk would do.
All personalities have to be initiated again.
From the first to the...
Yeah, so the Buddha was, let's say, had to attain the 8th initiation. During his life as Siddhartha and early Buddhahood, he had to go through the previous 7 initiations. He as a soul retains the initiations, but each new personality has to be brought up to speed. So because the personalities, the bodies are new, the bodies have to go through the initiations. Now, he can do that, maybe he did it in 10 years, and for us it's in 20, 30 lifetimes. You know, the first time that you get the initiations, it takes a long time between one and the other. But when you are recapping, they can be done to one after the other. Yes.
To have an analogy of the like humanness of the adepts or the masters, wasn't Shankaracharya a reincarnation to fix a mistake?
Yeah, Blavatsky said that's a whole can of worms. And Blavatsky said because people didn't understand what the Buddha was teaching about the non-self, Anatman or Anatta, people didn't understand, and that misunderstanding that the teachings of the Buddha produced, not because of his fault, but I mean he was trying to explain something that people couldn't understand. So karmically, that produced the incarnation of Shankaracharya, which is called by many the Hindu Buddha, where Shankaracharya talked about Atman as this universal self. Previously to that, in Hinduism, you have the idea of Purusha and Prakriti, and each Purusha is individual. So Shankara brought the idea of a self, but that is not individual, a self that is universal, and that was a way to try to correct, because when the Buddha was denying the existence of an eternal self, he meant an eternal individual self. But there is an eternal universal self that in the third turn of the wheel, as they say, are the teachings on the Dharmakaya that you have in the Dharmakaya Sutras. So yes, that's a whole other thing. But let me continue with this, if we can, because I want to get to what kind of attitude we can use in our daily life for this preparation. So, Jeffrey Hodgson says, during many lives on earth, the Master has watched and loved the pilgrim soul, invisibly has guided and inspired the inner individual. So we as a soul, during many lives, the Master starts paying attention to our souls many lives before we are ready for the path. And whenever by virtue of evolutionary progress an individual shows signs of spiritual awakening and the recognition of duty as the governing principle of life, the Master begins to come under, the person begins to come under more direct adept surveillance or observation and receives adept aid. In all the literature, it is said the Master is, you can be sure that the Master knows each one of you, that the Master has been following the growth of your soul for many incarnations. At this point, the Master is aware of all of you, and depending on your receptivity, the Master begins to spend more time and energy on you. In general, what the Master does is to bring things into your life that will serve as opportunities to serve, will serve as the beginning of training, and that's how the Master starts influencing or helping a soul in the process of evolution. Now, the help that the Masters give us is not material help. It's not so that we are more successful, more recognized, we are wealthier, we are in a better position. The Master has nothing to do with that. The Master leaves that to karma. Whatever your karma is, that's what will happen on the physical plane. But the Master will intervene or rearrange karma in such a way that things that happen can bring some lesson or can bring an opportunity to train yourself. So this situation in which you were put in touch with a person that was a pain in the neck for you, that person may have been sent by the Master specifically for you to start working on certain aspects of yourself. So that person that you say that you may resent, or the situation that you may resent, is the Master sending you teachers. And it's not that what the other person does is justifiable. The other person may be doing something that is objectively wrong and unfair, and that person will have to deal with his or her own karma, his path. But the Master puts you in contact with that person, knowing what that person is, and knowing that this is what this person is going to do. It's not that the Master is forcing this person to be nasty to you, but because they know who we are and how we react, the Master knows, okay, let us put these circumstances, to get these people in touch, because this is part of your training, and it's also for the other soul an opportunity to learn, from the experience. So if you feel inclined to that, and if you feel inspired by that, you are justified in believing that the Master is paying attention to you, not because you are special. The Master is paying attention to all souls that get to a certain level, which is still, we are still baby steps, on this path. But those baby steps are enough for the Master to start paying some attention and to start sending here and there situations, opportunities, challenges to see how you deal with them, what you learn from them. So this fact allows you to start living, again, if you feel inclined to that, if it inspires you, to start living with the sense that the Master is with you. Again, not because you are special, the Master is with all of us. But you can start living life with the sense that you are doing something under the watch of the Master. So let me read a couple more. The true aspirant is never really alone, but becomes increasingly under the observation of a teacher. This relationship eventually will deepen into discipleship, into being an accepted disciple. So the master begins to help us even when we may still be far away from being able to become a disciple. Such is the way of the true yogi, female or male, rich or poor, young or old. They don't care, again, the person's social position, ethnicity, religion, education, all that is part of the illusion. They look at the soul. When the soul begins to be receptive, they start watching the soul, and every now and then, putting things in the path of the soul so that the soul grows. So they are like nurses in that sense, Without the child, the toddler knowing, you are arranging things so that the toddler can grow and develop and stimulate that process. Let me read a few more. So there is a saying, when the pupil is ready, the master appears. For all the aspirations of the earnest and determined practitioner of yoga, and Hudson used the word yoga as just a general spiritual work on whatever line, jnana or karma or bhakti or whatever. We are not alone, but we are under observation. Every one of us, particularly when we begin to be spiritually awakened and to turn our thoughts away from the maya or illusion of form towards the reality of the one life. This the master sees. So the earnest search for enlightenment, which has become established as the inner purpose of living, as the inner purpose of our life becomes more and more about searching for enlightenment, truth, service, that is the sure sign that you as a soul, that the higher ego, has reached the phase of fully conscious awareness in the causal body. So these are technical terms. That means that you as a soul are awake. Souls begin like baby souls. They are not aware, they are not awake. Throughout evolution, the soul gradually begins to awaken, and as the soul awakens, it begins to start being able to guide the personality at the beginning very feebly and imperfectly, and then more and more guide the personality into a spiritual living. So he says, the fact that you are here, that you have certain level of commitment to this, shows that your soul is awakened, because you as personalities would never seek this if not because you as a soul are pushing the personality. The personality just wants to have fun, pleasure, and the personality by itself wouldn't be wasting the time being sitting there 2 hours listening to something. That's not something that comes from the personality. So the fact that you are here means your soul has enough level of awakening, and this is when the masters start paying attention to that soul and personality. We have a discussion now before we finish, but I want to read a few quotes. Let me see this one. Yeah. Okay. It is taught that we should because of all this, it is taught that we should make it a practice of deliberately and daily thinking reverently of such a great one, of a master, so that however much one may be involved in some external activity, that is only one part of one's nature, which is to some extent in a state of self-recollection. So what he's saying is, one practice, we can try to integrate the idea of the master in our life, in every little thing that we do. How you visualize the master, again, it depends on you. What is more effective? If you visualize the master in a more abstract way, I always say the master. I always visualize it in a quite abstract but real way. Other people may think of one particular body and personality of the master. A person may feel attracted to Master Kutumi. Then you can visualize your connection and being in the presence of a particular master, or being in the presence of the master in a more abstract way. You are free to see what fits better your way and your personality. But what Hudson says here is, it is fine to integrate the idea of the master. If you feel inspired to do, this is not an injunction, this is not something that you should be doing this. Honesty is the only thing that matters. So if this doesn't move you, don't worry, it's fine. At some point it may, or your path may be such that this is not needed as part of your path right now. But if you feel inspired by that, you are justified or allowed, let's say, or it is fine to bring the sense that, like a constant conversation with the master. Whatever you are going to do, do your own discipline. Wake up and say, and you can wake up and say, if that inspires you, okay, a new day, Master, I offer myself to do your work, to be open to what you need. Before coming to a meeting, you sit silently and say, Master, I offer myself to do the work. In meditation, Master, I offer my heart and my mind to you, or whatever. You invent your own thing, but the idea is, if this inspires you, you can start bringing it into your consciousness. You are going to have a hard conversation with your boss, with your partner, with a friend. Master, I offer myself to you, and I invoke your blessing so that I can do things in the best possible way. Never for personal reasons. Master, make my soccer team, my football team, Boca, defeat Bayern Munich tomorrow. I'm tempted to do that, but I know he's not going to listen. Oh, Master, please, I really want that, or not in that personal sense. What you ask of the Master is that the Master can help you be your best, do your best. If you need help, you want help to be your best and do your best, not so that things go your way. And then, so you can ask for I have a friend, this was quite a dramatic story, and he was what do you call the people who watch on a pool, watch on a pool of swimming pool, so that lifeguard. So he was a lifeguard in a pool, swimming pool, and that there are some filters in the pool, and one of the grills that was covering the filter just got off of it, and a young girl was sucked. She was, maybe 6, 7, and she was sucked, and she couldn't get out. So he saw that, and so he jumped, and he started trying to pull the girl, and he couldn't. It was really a lot of suction. So the thought that came to his mind is, Master, please help. It's not. It was not even consciously. This was like the cry of his heart. And he says, when he said that, he could pull the girl out. I don't mean by this that the Master was necessarily aware, but because the consciousness of the Master is everywhere, you tune into certain consciousness. The Master may personally, individually, may or may not have been aware of that, but this is why we say the Master is everywhere, so you can tap into that. So if there are difficult situations, again, if this inspires you, you can tap into that. Again, not as we do with God, oh God, give me this. No, in invoking the Master, what you are doing is trying to tap into that strength, that wisdom, that can stimulate the best in you. And then you may, on what you have to do on the physical plane, maybe you do that before a conversation, and then the conversation goes to hell and everything is wrong. That's fine. That this is not a magical thing that you invoke it and then suddenly everything will go well. But in doing this, you are gradually aligning yourself more and more, and maybe what was best for everybody is that the conversation happened in that way. The masters are always looking in the growth of the soul. You know, there was a problem in the London Lodge, and there were conflicts there, and then Sinnett complained to the masters. He was communicating with them by letters and say, how come that you don't prevent this from happening? And the master said, not only we are not preventing this from happening, we are actually fanning the fire and stimulating it, because there is something unresolved here, and if you keep covering it, it will fester and it will produce the death of the lodge. So this needs to come up and you need to face it. So not only we were trying to prevent it, we were stimulating what was there so that you take care of it. So the master sees things not in terms of pleasure and pain. They see things in terms of growth and development. So many of the things that you perceive as bad in your life or suffering, they may have been sent by the master for your own good. You know, like a child playing with the video games, and the mom comes and says, okay, stop that, you have to go to school. No, I want to stay here. No, you have to go to school. And then the child feels that the mother is being cruel and is punishing him, that he has to do that. And of course the mother knows this is good for you. You don't understand that this is good for you. You may be suffering, but this is what you need. So similar with things that happen in our lives. We may suffer, we think this is bad for us, but from a higher perspective, this is the best that can happen for us.
So we can talk that the master, of course, work for humanity, for the world, but when we see the relation with individual, single, so the master work for develop, for help to develop or awake the inner master in every people.
Yes, they have two jobs. I mean, I have more quotes, but let me show you here. No, it's not here. So the masters work for the whole humanity, and then they start paying attention to individuals when the individuals are prepared. Or maybe it comes later. That's yeah. So there is a quote where the idea is that the masters are caring for all souls, and each master has under their care millions of souls, the souls that belong to the same ray of the master, and they are nourishing all the souls. But when they see a soul that begins to be able to influence the personality to enter the path, it's like they pay a little more attention to this soul. While working on all souls, whether the soul is a soul of a personality that is a murderer, a tyrant, they are stimulating all souls. But when a soul begins to be close to the path, and close I mean maybe 5, 10 incarnations away, the way they see things, they think in terms of hundreds and thousands of years, not in our narrow view, then the master takes away some of his attention to send a little thing to this soul here, and then again with all the souls, and then send something here. And now as this soul begins to be closer and closer to the path, then the master starts paying more attention to those souls, and they have to regulate their time. In the Mahatma letters you see that they say, we are so busy that we can't pay so much attention to these letters, and yet this is necessary. So they have to regulate their energy, their attention, and that's why they will only pay increasing attention to an individual that is doing this to help humanity, because that individual will later become another Mahatma that will help them deal with all the souls. So they can't waste their time on an individual that after attaining enlightenment will disappear from the world. I mean, that's fine, you can do that, but our function as a master, he would say, I suppose, it just to help those, help everybody, but pay special attention to those who will become one of us, so that we have more people helping. But they always help all of humanity also. Let me see. Well, the distance between the master and the aspirant is not one of space, it is moral and spiritual only. Similarly, the barriers between them, the master and disciple, are not mountain chains, they consist of qualities of character. The separation is within the aspirant, and this can and must be overcome. He must strip himself to the bone, every personal must go, stern simplicity is the ideal. Now, this is a gradual process. The more you let go of the ego, the closer you are to the master. The more you work from altruism, the closer you are to the master. The more your path becomes similar to the master, the more you live in their presence and you express their presence and their consciousness. So the idea this morning was to try to bring up this sense that the master is not something far away. I remember when I was in the youth group, Rada Burnier had come to Argentina and she was giving a lecture on the masters. And I asked her, I said, when we read about the masters seem so far away from us. I mean, they are perfect, we are so limited, and I feel the master is so far away. And Rada looked and said, the master is never far away. The master is always right there with you. And it depends on you how close you are to the master. But when we read about the masters like in the Mahatma letters, you may get that sense that the masters are a foreign reality. Oh no, I'm not ready for that, or they don't even know about me, or no, the master is very aware of each of you. It is said every member that joins the society generates a link to the masters, and the master sees every single member that joins the society. There is like a flash that comes to the master, and then the master can assess the degree of maturity of that soul. That link can become inactive if the person is not trying to live a spiritual life, or can increase more and more and becomes a means for the master to send influence. But every single member, and of course not only in the society, they care about all humanity. But we have this description in connection to the TS. Every single person that becomes a member, the master is aware of that person. All right, time is up.